Every family has a holiday they circle on the calendar, not for the food or fireworks, but because something in the heart feels unfinished, restless. For us, Memorial Day was always that day. We gathered, we laughed, and we tried to ignore the shiver that sometimes crept up our spines as dusk rolled in. But there's one Memorial Day that split my world into before and after. I can never think of it the same way again. It started with sunlight so bright you almost wanted to squint, the kind that turns the world gold and makes even the shadows look friendly. We picked our usual spot by the edge of Maple Grove Park, the one with enough trees for shade and a view of the old war memorial, the stone obelisk half swallowed by wildflowers and dandelions. My sister, Erin, laid out the red checkered blanket. My wife, Sarah, handed out paper plates as the kids, my daughter Lucy and my nephew Jamie, darted between the coolers and the swing set, shouting, their voices high and wild. My brother-in-law, Dennis, had the grill going, sending up plumes of smoke that wrapped around us in the smell of burgers, hot dogs, and melted cheddar. If you listened close, you could almost hear the echoes of every Memorial Day before, the uncles in folding chairs, the whispered stories, the shared jokes about whose potato salad would disappear first. I felt lucky. I felt safe. Then, Jamie started saluting. Jamie was 6, the kind of kid who still wore sneakers with cartoon dinosaurs and was always sticky with something: popsicle juice, syrup, watermelon. Normally, he was a blur, running, tripping, giggling, falling down and popping up again. But this time, he stopped dead. Right in the middle of the field, with sunbeams painting his hair gold, Jamie snapped his small body to attention. He raised his hand in a salute so sharp it didn't belong on a child's frame. His eyes, big, brown, usually filled with mischief, went dark and distant. He was staring straight ahead, toward the thicket of trees on the edge of the park. At first, we chuckled. Look at that, my sister laughed. He's practicing for the 4th of July already. But Jamie didn't smile. He didn't even blink. His hand stayed at his brow, fingers pressed tight. I saw a bead of sweat run down his cheek, and for a moment, I wondered if he was playing at being a soldier or something else. The adults shrugged it off. Sarah snapped a photo on her phone. Lucy tried to get his attention with a frisbee, but Jamie didn't move until the wind rustled the branches behind him. Then, just as suddenly, he dropped his hand and walked back, silent. He didn't explain, didn't joke. Just went for his juice box, eyes lingering on that same shadowy patch beneath the trees. I should have let it go, but something in my chest tightened. I'd grown up around this park. I knew every bend in the creek, every crooked tree. But that look on Jaime's face, utter, bone-deep seriousness, reminded me of funerals, not picnics. Everything okay, buddy? I asked when I knelt beside him. He nodded. Just hot, he muttered, but he kept glancing over my shoulder. I felt a chill, as if the sun had gone behind a cloud just for us. The afternoon wore on. Kids shrieked in the splash pad. The adults debated baseball and swapped stories of old classmates, deployments, divorces. I watched Jamie. Every 20 minutes or so, he'd drift toward the tree line and stop. His tiny spine would stiffen. His arm would rise, trembling slightly. He was saluting again, always in the same direction, always toward that shadowy patch where the trees met the field. Sometimes, he'd whisper something, lips moving in a soundless murmur. Each time, he looked paler, more tired. Nobody else noticed. Sarah was fussing over condiments. Erin was in the middle of a story about her new job. Only I kept watching, heart pounding, stomach clenched. After the 3rd time, I tried to distract him with a game of tag. Jamie smiled for a moment, but as soon as I let him go, he drifted back to his post. It was like he was being called. I caught up to him once, just as he raised his hand. "Who are you saluting, Jamie?" I whispered, only half joking. He didn't look at me. He whispered, "He's here to remember." I felt the hairs on my arms rise. "Who is?" I asked. But Jamie just shook his head. "You wouldn't understand." By late afternoon, the heat broke. A breeze swept through, rattling the leaves. For a moment, it felt like the temperature dropped 10 degrees, just where Jamie was standing. Even Lucy, usually fearless, ran back from the trees, rubbing her arms and saying, "It's freezing over there." I tried to laugh it off. "Probably just a cold spot," I said, but the words sounded hollow. I remembered a story my own grandfather used to tell, about pockets of cold that linger where the dead don't rest easy. The wind picked up, carrying the laughter of families from the other side of the park. But where we stood, the world felt muted heavy. Jamie stood at attention again, saluting. His face was ashen, and his eyes glittered with something I'd never seen before. Fear. Reverence. Both. For a split second, I thought I saw something move in the shadows behind him, a flicker of color, the suggestion of a figure in a long coat. But when I blinked, it was gone. Only trees, whispering secrets. Dinner came and went. We packed up as the sky turned lavender and gold, the memorial casting a long, thin shadow across the grass. Jamie was quiet. I caught him tracing circles on the condensation of his water bottle, eyes still locked on the trees. Driving home, he stared out the window, lips moving as if rehearsing lines for a play only he could see. Sarah asked, "Did you have fun today, sweetie?" Jamie nodded, but it was a mechanical motion. "He seems off," she whispered to me as we tucked him in that night. "He's tired," I lied. "He'll be fine by morning." But in my gut, I knew better. That night, the house felt restless. Every door creaked, every pipe moaned. I blamed the wind at first until I heard Jamie. It was just after midnight when I got up to check on him. I found his door slightly ajar, light from the hallway pooling across his floor. Jamie was sitting up, legs folded beneath him, face washed pale by the blue glow of his nightlight. He was saluting again, this time, to the far corner of his bedroom. "Jamie," I whispered, voice trembling. "Who are you saluting?" He didn't answer at first. His eyes were glassy, unfocused. Finally, he whispered, "He's sad. He misses someone. He wants to be remembered." A chill trickled down my spine. I stepped inside, kneeling at his side. "There's no one there, buddy. It's just us." But as I reached for him, the air grew so cold my breath misted in the shaft of light. Jaime's eyes widened. "He's here," he whispered, a shiver running through his small frame. I pulled him into my arms. He was icy to the touch, like he'd been standing out in the frost. "Let's go back to sleep," I said, but neither of us really did. I lay awake beside him, staring at that empty corner, wondering what my nephew saw that I could not. I tried to brush it off as dreams and nerves, but over breakfast, Jamie was jumpy, his gaze flickering to corners, his fork trembling in his grip. Sarah and Aaron exchanged worried glances. "Maybe he's coming down with something," Aaron suggested. But I needed answers. I spent the morning combing through local history websites, old obituaries, and digitized newspaper clippings from the town library. That's when I found the story. Decades ago, a veteran named Harold Whitaker used to walk the park every Memorial Day, rain or shine. He wore a long, battered coat and carried a battered photo in his pocket. People said he'd lost his entire unit in a firefight overseas, friends he never got to say goodbye to. Each Memorial Day, he'd stand by the obelisk, saluting, rain running down his weathered face. Then, one year, he simply vanished. Some thought he'd moved. Others said his heart finally gave out, right there by the trees, after one last lonely salute. But a few, especially the old-timers, claimed something lingered. Cold spots. Whispered names. Children talking to empty air. It sounded like a ghost story, the kind people share over beer at the VFW. But after what I'd seen, I wasn't so sure. That night, we gathered in the living room. I shared what I'd found. Aaron scoffed, nervous. Sarah looked shaken. But Jamie listened, silent, hands folded in his lap. "Did you see him?" I finally asked. Jamie nodded, almost relieved. "He's lonely. He wants someone to remember his friends. He said it's not enough to have parades. People forget the names." His voice was so small, so sincere, I felt my throat tighten. "What does he want?" Erin asked, her tone barely above a whisper. Jamie shrugged. "Just, not to be forgotten." There was a long silence. For the first time, Memorial Day felt heavy, as if the entire house was shouldering a weight generations old. On the third night, as the sun set and cast bruised shadows across the living room, Jamie stood up from his toys and walked to the window. Without a word, he saluted. For a moment, I thought I saw a flicker in the glass, a reflection that didn't quite match our family. The suggestion of a man in an old coat, his face lined by sorrow and gratitude. "Is he here?" I asked, my heart thundering. Jamie nodded. "He says thank you." I felt a wave of emotion, sadness, respect, a bone-deep understanding that some debts can never be repaid, only honored. I stepped up beside my nephew and put my hand on his shoulder. "Tell him we remember," I said softly. "We won't forget." Jaime's face relaxed, the tightness fading. He let his hand drop and leaned into me, exhausted but at peace. After that evening, the salutes became less frequent. The cold spots vanished, the house grew warmer. Jamie returned to his old self, laughing, chasing Lucy in the yard, his eyes bright again. But every Memorial Day, when we returned to Maple Grove Park, Jamie would pause by the stone obelisk. Sometimes, without a word, he'd raise his hand in a quiet, dignified salute, his gaze fixed on the trees. I never questioned him. The other adults learned to follow his lead, and a hush would fall for a moment, as if the air itself bowed its head. The story of Harold Whittaker became our family's private legend. We left a small bouquet at the base of the memorial every year, a silent tribute not just to him, but to all those whose names are fading with time. And if anyone asked why, we just said, some memories are best honored in silence. Now, years later, I watch Jamie, taller, older, walk the park with his own kids. He still pauses in that same spot, sometimes sharing the legend with them, sometimes just standing quietly as the wind stirs the grass. I see a flicker of pride in his eyes, the knowledge that he's part of a chain of memory, a link that refuses to break. And on every Memorial Day, as the sun sets and the park grows still, I find myself glancing at those shadowed trees, half expecting to see the outline of a man in a battered coat, standing watch. I don't know if the past ever truly lets go, but I do know this: as long as we remember, we are never entirely alone. The forgotten find their place, not in parades or speeches, but in the quiet, stubborn love of families who refuse to let go. Sometimes, the most powerful ghosts are the ones who teach us how to remember, not just with our minds, but with our hearts. If you've ever been 16, you probably know the mixture of cockiness and paranoia that comes with thinking you're too old to be scared until the night proves you wrong. That Memorial Day weekend at Kyle's family farm was supposed to be about grilling, bad jokes, and too much soda. Instead, it became the story I can't retell without feeling a chill crawl up my spine. This isn't one of those ghost stories you hear around the fire. This is the one that made us all believers. For as long as I could remember, Memorial Day weekend was sacred in Kyle's family. Their property sat on the edge of nowhere, miles of rustling grass, fields that vanished into tree lines, a white farmhouse standing stubbornly against time. For city kids like us, it was both a playground and a step back in history. Kyle's parents, a pair of sunburned, easy-laughing adults, welcomed us each year with open arms and a fridge stocked with sodas, leftover barbecue, and bags of chips. The crew, me, John, the narrator, Kyle, host and the only one who could actually drive a tractor, Marcus, class clown, Jenna, brains and sass, all in one, and Ray, the wild card, always up for a dare. We'd graduated from marshmallow roasts and flashlight tag to more grown-up games, cards, truth, or dare, sneaking sips of beer when the adults went to bed. Still, the house always seemed to dare us to take things further. Kyle's farmhouse was the definition of creaky. Every door, every stair, every gust of wind seemed to have its own voice. The place was ancient by American standards, a century and change, surrounded by a wraparound porch and guarded by wind-bent oak trees. Inside, sunlight painted stripes through crooked blinds onto faded rugs and ancient wallpaper. There was the living room, with its two big fireplace, the cramped kitchen with a battered table, upstairs, bedrooms for guests, and, looming above it all, the attic. That attic was legend. Supposedly, the original builder's son had hoarded all kinds of junk up there: steamer trunks, broken rocking horses, a wardrobe full of coats that always smelled like rain. It was the one place none of us liked to linger. Even Kyle, who'd lived there his whole life, avoided it after dark. "There's a reason the attic window never stays clean," he'd joke. "Even the ghosts want out." That Saturday night, after the adults went to bed, we found ourselves at loose ends. Marcus suggested a movie. Ray wanted to sneak out and try cow tipping. He was serious. Jenna, ever practical, lobbied for a game everyone could play without leaving the house: hide and seek, farmhouse edition. We all groaned, pretending to be too mature for kids' games. But something about the challenge, the thrill of hiding in a place that felt like it had too many corners, got under our skin. "All lights off," Ray declared. "No flashlights. Last one found does all the dishes tomorrow. Rules accepted." No one wanted dish duty in a house that seemed to generate dirty plates by the dozen. We drew straws. I lost, of course. It was up to me to count. I closed my eyes, pressed my forehead to the banister, and started to count. 1, 2, 3. Behind me, I heard footsteps scattering, whispers and laughter fading as everyone dashed to their hiding places. By 20, the house had fallen silent. The kind of silence you only hear far from the city: no sirens, no car horns, just the occasional creak of cooling wood. I kept counting, heart beating a little too fast. I could feel the house settling around me, each groan and shudder sounding almost like a breath. "Ready or not, here I come," I called, trying to sound braver than I felt. I started in the kitchen. The glow from the moon made everything look silver and strange. I found Ray right away. He'd wedged himself behind the island, trying to stifle giggles. He jumped out with a boo that would have made a toddler jump, but my nerves were already shot. Next up was Marcus, who'd picked the classic hide under a blanket and pretend to be laundry routine in the den. I nearly sat on him. The house, though, seemed to grow colder with every room I cleared. Shadows stretched across the floor, shifting when I turned my head. Every time a floorboard popped, my heart skipped. "Guys," I called, trying to keep things light. "If you jump out, I'm not above throwing a pillow at you." No answer, just the house breathing around me. Eventually, only Kyle and Jenna remained. I checked the mudroom, the laundry, even the broom closet. No luck. That left the attic. I hesitated at the bottom of the folding ladder, staring up into the darkness. The air at the ceiling looked thicker, almost blue. "You know this is where the horror movie music starts," I muttered, trying to make myself laugh. The ladder creaked under my weight. I pushed up the hatch and peered in. Moonlight from the attic's single grimy window painted a pale path across dust-covered boxes and the silhouettes of old trunks. That's when I saw it, a single bare leg sticking out from behind a trunk that definitely hadn't been there during daylight. My first thought, Marcus was trying for the double scare. "Marcus? Kyle?" I whispered. No answer. I crept closer, my shoes stirring up clouds of dust. The air felt wrong, colder and thick, like trying to breathe underwater. I was about to reach out when a voice, right behind me, low and strange, whispered my full name. Not John, not dude, not anything my friends ever called me. My family name, in a tone that sounded old, gravelly, and impossibly close. I spun around, nothing but shadows. Heart hammering, I stumbled backward, nearly falling down the ladder. My only thought was to get out. I slammed the attic door behind me, hands shaking. I found Kyle and Jenna on the porch swing, staring at the moonlit fields. They both looked shaken. "Why'd you try to scare me in the attic?" I demanded, still catching my breath. Kyle blinked. "I was out here the whole time, man." "Ask Jenna. The attic gives me the creeps." Jenna nodded. "Yeah, and I wasn't up there either. I heard you running around." "I was hiding under the stairs and," she hesitated, glancing at Kyle. "And what?" I pressed. I heard someone under there with me, whispering all our names, over and over. But I was the only one hiding there." The three of us sat in stunned silence, every joke about ghosts and old houses suddenly losing its charm. Ray and Marcus joined us, faces pale. Ray swore he'd seen someone, a sixth person, wave from the kitchen window, then vanish. We stared at each other, goosebumps prickling in the warm night air. We should have laughed it off, chalked it up to nerves and darkness. But no one was laughing now. Every sound in the house seemed louder, every shadow longer. We locked every door, every window. No one wanted to talk about what had happened, but none of us could sleep. Around midnight, footsteps echoed down the upstairs hallway, slow, deliberate, too heavy for any of us. When we finally drifted off, it was to the creaks of the old farmhouse and the knowledge that we'd played a game with something that didn't want to be forgotten. Chapter 9, Midnight Vigil. Sleep barely came that night. I drifted in and out of shallow dreams, each more unsettling than the last, a leg vanishing behind a trunk, a cold hand gripping my shoulder, the sound of my own name echoing up from the dark. At some point, I woke to the sound of footsteps overhead. Not the quick scuttle of a raccoon on the roof, but slow, purposeful thuds like boots pacing the attic. Kyle heard them too. We met on the landing, both pale in the dim hallway light. "You heard that, right?" he whispered. We considered waking the others, but the air felt so charged, so tense, we just stood side by side and listened. The steps would stop, then start again, closer. For one wild moment, I thought I heard my own name, spoken in that same guttural whisper from before. Finally, the footsteps faded. But the house felt altered, like the game hadn't really ended. At dawn, we gathered in the kitchen, groggy and silent. No one wanted to eat. No one wanted to talk about the night. Ray broke the silence first. "There was someone else in the house. I swear it." He looked around, waiting for us to laugh or tell him he was crazy. Instead, we just nodded, each of us nursing the same chill. Jenna admitted, voice barely above a whisper, "Under the stairs, I heard someone whispering all our names. Not just mine. All of us. Like a roll call." Marcus, usually all jokes, stared at the table. I saw someone at the window when I was hiding in the pantry. They waved, but their hand was too big. Too pale. Then they were gone. I told them about the attic, about the bare leg behind the trunk, about the voice that called me by the name only my family used. about the way the air turned cold, about the fear that wouldn't let go. We realized the game we played had become something else, a ritual that had invited the past to join us. The farmhouse, already old and heavy with memory, seemed to have its own secrets. We were no longer just kids playing games in the dark, we were part of the story now. When the sun finally cleared the fields, we found the courage to climb back to the attic together. The morning light made the dust sparkle, made the trunks and boxes look harmless. But there, on the inside of the foggy window, was a handprint larger than any of ours, pressed into the condensation. And below it, traced with a finger, my full name. For a long moment, no one spoke. The attic felt colder than the rest of the house, as if it held onto the night. Jenna snapped a picture on her phone, hands shaking. Ray, always the daredevil, said, "We should leave. Now." No one argued. Packing that morning, we barely spoke. There were no jokes, no bravado. Kyle's parents noticed but didn't pry. Maybe they remembered their own teenage chills, or maybe some part of them knew, too, that old houses carry things, memories, regrets, whispers that never really fade. On the drive back, the five of us were quiet. Every so often, I'd look out the window and see the farmhouse in my mind's eye, the porch swing creaking, the attic window catching the morning sun, a shape just beyond sight, waving goodbye. Chapter 13, The Pact. We never played hide and seek in the dark again. For months, none of us even mentioned that weekend. When we finally did years later, in a late-night dorm room or over beers after graduation, we spoke about it in hushed voices, as if the thing we'd met that night might overhear. We didn't know who, or what, had joined our game. Some of us tried to explain it away, maybe it was a vagrant, maybe an animal, maybe our nerves. But in our bones, we knew. The house was old, the land older, and the shadows oldest of all. What we did know, there had been a presence, one that knew our names, one that was waiting not to be found, but to be remembered. Now, years have passed. We're scattered careers, cities, lives of our own. But every Memorial Day, when I see kids running through a yard or hear laughter echo in an old house, I feel that old chill. Sometimes, I wonder if places remember us, too. If there are games we start that never truly end. Every so often, I get a text from one of the old crew. "You remember that night?" And the answer is always yes. How could I forget? There are some stories that never let you go, some games that never truly finish. Sometimes, the only way to honor the past is to let it reach through, touch you, and remind you. You were never really alone.